He had always been proud of how he drove. He'd been weaned on the raw motor racing of the 1970s, that mix of lazy, cheap glamour and cartoon heroism. Hot summer days lying with dimpled elbows on an orange nylon carpet in front of the Radio Rental's late television. Enwrapped. A small boy caught in a stream of dust-strewn sunlight. A time when fathers had driving gloves and gripped steering wheels as solid as bone. Women, most definitely in a supporting role, sat in the passenger seat, guardians of cotton hankies and concertina maps, both secured in the glove compartment. Regulators of the consumption of tinned travel sweets, which were dusted with a white powder that was not icing sugar nor flour, but something in between and never seen anywhere else. Motorways were pale egg blue and glamorous. Driving was a ritual. This was a time when driving was the mark of a man. That was how he was shaped, from boy to man. "I'm a good driver," he would say in his soft, oaked voice. As a young man, he had been a good swimmer, and he still had the broad shoulders and long legs. Working for the bank had slowly softened the angles, and now he was broadened with middle age. Regular rounds of golf kept him relatively trim, but did little to make him interesting. He ate well. Too much meat, of course, but the children of the war generation were brought up by those with memories of a time of half-curled, dead-leaf beige ration books and a bone-deep fear of hunger. Forever condemned to worry about an insufficiency of protein, even in a world with far too much of everything. He was proud of his driving. He was proud, too, of his silver Audi, as if it were a high-achieving child that he had raised himself, or a very obedient dog he had trained. He had owned it for about 4 years now, and he drove it on the journey to work every weekday morning along the quiet, meandering roads built for carts and bicycles that linked his village to the market town from which he caught the train. He always drove fast. It usually took him 11 minutes from driveway exit to station car park entrance. He timed it, every run. Any longer than 11 minutes and his forehead would be indented with a small furrowed frown for the rest of the day, and the only drive home would erase it, like a mother's hand brushed across her child's forehead. He treated this drive as a physical pleasure. His strongly sinewed hands curled light but powerful around the steering wheel. His movements were certain and quick. A gear change, a readjustment of his line to avoid the winter-cracked potholes on the inner line of a rolling bend. He knew the road well. He had worn it down over the years with this daily run. His mark was etched there. This morning was like 1,000 others. His alarm had wakened him from a dream that was just beyond the fingertip reach of his memory. He lived alone now. His children had all left home and scattered themselves across the country. His wife had left too. He had not tried to stop her. They had grown so far apart that he hardly knew her by the time she went. He had noticed that she was unhappy, but he had not cared enough to inquire why, or do anything about it. The younger man she met at work had been in many ways a relief. He felt only a twinge of loss, largely at the inconvenience of having to do his own washing. He was wryly aware of this, and sometimes dirtily ashamed. So he rose that morning at the same time as usual, and showered silently. Soap, deodorant, electric shaver, toast for breakfast. The house was always quiet now, and he felt its size, like a child in clothes that are too big. He moved in a way that was conscious of that excess space. a single crumb-scattered plate, and a single tea-marked cup in the cavernous dishwasher. He shut the door quickly and winced, without knowing he did so. He ran his morning routine on autopilot. Time to go to his beloved car. "Hello, beautiful," he said every morning. First words, his voice unused until then. The racing green electric garage door rose slowly, opening the day like a sunrise. The driving seat was adjusted for him and only him, the seat that had shaped itself to his contours. It sighed gently in welcome as he sat. He even loved the deep-throated clunk of the door as it shut. He curved out of his drive, shearing smoothly away, confident of what lay before him. A good driver. He settled into the rhythm of those 11 minutes of time, like every one of those 1,000 mornings before. Only the hum of the engine accompanied his journey. He drove only to the sound of the car and his own breath, and the startling, sharp birdsong that occasionally sliced through the glass. If he could have muted that, he would have done. It was the movement that caught his eye. She smoothed a fawn cotton shirt over a June smooth, pregnant belly, and he was then suddenly aware that there was a woman in the passenger seat of his car, and that she'd been there for some time. "Don't worry," she said. And he found that he was not worried. She smoothed the shirt down again. "I'm due in 4 weeks' time," she said. "This is my first." She had a voice with a slight airiness to it, as if she was sighing over a half-blown kiss, a voice curved by a smile. He found he was smiling too. He remembered then the announcement all those years ago from his wife that he was to be a father. That turbulently mixed feeling of relief, excitement, and fear. He half glanced at her, being careful not to take his whole gaze off the road. There was a hard corner in about 200 metres, and he knew he had to be in second. "Who are you?" he asked, simply. He felt her tense slightly. The movement was not great, but it was enough. "Don't ask me yet," she said. "I just want a few more minutes. Just a bit more time." A loose smattering of sparrows darted between the hedgerows. He took the corner in second. The cow parsley along the verge rippled and waved at the passing of the car. "The blackthorn blossom is magnificent this year," she said. "The heavy rain, maybe. It's like a fireworks display in the hedgerows round here." She was right. There were shocks of it regularly at the roadside, startling white. "Blackthorn blossom comes out before the leaves," she said. "That's why it's so spectacular. All those glorious, close-packed white flowers on a bare stem. Hawthorn is the opposite. New leaves first, blossom after." He felt her smile broaden, self-conscious. He couldn't help but smile with her. Her voice reflected his father's voice from his childhood, imparting the same knowledge. "Maybe I'll come back and pick sloes in the autumn," he said, knowing he wouldn't. He enjoyed having her there. "Maybe some sloe gin. There should be a good crop." He took the next corner carefully, more carefully than usual. He did have a pregnant woman in the car, after all. He stole another glance as they levelled out. She had copper brown hair, shiny, bold. Her earlobes was naked and pale. Her fingers rested loose on her near-born child. "You drive this way every morning," she said. He knew it wasn't a question, but he responded as if it were. He felt that if he kept her tied by this conversation, she would have to stay. "Yes, every work morning, just to the station." "Yes," she said, in a way that told him she knew, but was happy he had shared it. "You like driving?" she said. And again, he knew it was a polite statement, not a question. She did not feel like a stranger. "I do like driving," he said. "I find it relaxing. I am a good driver." He felt childish as he said it, even as his mouth was slightly ajar at the end of the sentence. He was whisked back to his bare-legged 8-year-old self, propped up on maroon cushions behind the wheel of his dad's black Ford Princess, reversed it in jerks up the driveway. They swept around a long, curved part of the lane, passing an irregular grass-edged pond. Fat mallards bobbed on the water like balloons. "You drive fast," she said suddenly, quickly, as if she were worried he would be angry, as if she had to say it quickly or would be too afraid to say it at all. "Fast, but safely," he said in return. "I know these roads well. The corners, the cambers, the dips." He sped up as the road opened up again, and field and wood clustered either side. He felt her sit up straighter. "I thought I had time," she said, suddenly. "The trees were partly blocking my line of vision. The blackthorn blossom like bright white fireworks. So beautiful." She paused. She measured her words steadily and carefully, like footsteps on an unknown path. "So beautiful." In his half vision, he saw her tilt her head to one side. She stopped. He waited for her to continue, but she said nothing. He rolled his shoulders, trying to shrug off the discomfort, but it wasn't physical. He was frowning now. Tightness in his head. He wanted to talk to her more. He wanted to continue the shared sense of a companion. He wanted to have more time with her here. Suddenly she said, "You can ask now," very quietly. And again, no louder. "You can ask now." He turned quickly now to look at her, and then turned back to the road ahead. He was a good driver. In that glance he saw she was looking straight out through the windscreen, her hands resting gently on the downward curve of her child's shape, her face pale and motionless, her head round the bend, obscured by the curved brow of a hill and the startling thick whiteness of the blackthorn blossom. A small blue car was nosing up to the junction, like a nuzzling calf. He wanted to ask, but not to ask. "Who are you?" he whispered. As he spoke, Her face was already beginning to darken with the bruising. Like the silt from a delta, it spread gracefully across her pale skin. The right side of her face looked as if a palm had pressed inwards and caved in an eggshell. Her words were thickened, but like the birdsong, he could not blot them out. I'm the woman you killed.